now move into PRS. Oh, cool, welcome. Oh, yeah, great. All right, so some seasoned travelers and some new arrivals. This is excellent. I've never done a talk in here before, so I should be listening. A little bit of pressure, all the ancestors staring a little more intently. I mean, I have Nelly P. Hall like really looking. He is like looking rather intently, so I'll try not to.
Yeah, he's not very impressed though.
He's looking off to the side. Yeah, he's right there. All right, what do you think?
Yay!
That's good.
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome. My name is Carlyle Coash, and it's, as always, an honor to be here doing a talk, especially about some of my favorite subjects in terms of Buddhist tradition, and also just being in this particular space itself has just an extra special excellence. One of the things we'll talk a lot about tonight is about lineage and this aspect of an incredible lineage of teachers and practitioners for thousands of years that in many ways sort of support Milarepa in his journey. And this place embodies that notion, because the lineage of knowledge and wisdom that is here is incredible. All right. Hello. Welcome. I mean, stay. That's good. I sing songs and everything. As is always the case when I'm talking with Kelly, who's sitting in the back, our esteemed Kelly, who is the Deputy Executive Director as well as the Chief Librarian. We always have this conversation of what should we talk about? What's an interesting topic? What are the things that PRS is exploring? And almost immediately she said, oh, Milarepa. Did you do something on Milarepa? And I was like, yeah, let's do Milarepa. And I don't know if you realized, Kelly, that tomorrow is the celebration of Milarepa's death. So it's actually a very auspicious day tomorrow on the Tibetan calendar. And so it's kind of perfect that this is just haphazardly, and that we're here again to talk about Milarepa. Why we sang. This is taken from one of Milarepa's songs. Singing the key instructions isn't meaningless, it's the lineage tradition. That these practices have been practiced again for millennia, over and over, handed down from one to another, one to another. So there's this incredible heritage there. And before we start, or as we start, there are a couple of things to kind of lay the groundwork for this conversation. Khenpo Sotrim Gyamtso, I wanted to just sort of acknowledge and speak to, because the reason why we have as many Milarepa songs translated and put to music is because of this gentleman, who for the last 60 plus years has been an advocate for Milarepa and for telling his stories and for teaching it to people all over the world. I first met him when I went to Naropa University for a master's degree in Buddhism, and 3 months into the program, he happened to be anticipating a teaching thank you.
Thank you.
And so you'll find out when I say thank you a lot. In West Africa, when someone sneezes, when you're saying something, that is the ancestors agreeing with what's being said. So, just a little lineage support. Lineage, okay, cool, you're talking about Naropa, all right. And I was very fortunate, and a friend of mine said, you've got to check out Kempo's talk, because it'll be great. And I did, and of course he made everyone sing Milarepa songs for half the talk, even though that's not what this talk was about. And my friend also said, make sure that you ask talk to the person who's coordinating his schedule, because you want to get on the morning sing list. I'm like, the morning sing? Okay. And so I found the person, and they're like, oh yeah, show up at 8 a.m. in this place. And I did, and we went up to where he was staying, and we sang Milarepa songs for an hour. And as long as you showed up, that's 8 a.m. every day, you could listen to him do an impromptu teaching, and you'd sing. And so, for me, my introduction to these Milarepa songs was this kind of wonderful, heartfelt space of being welcomed. It didn't matter who I was, it didn't matter if I even knew who he was. Campo just welcomed everybody in. You got handed a songbook, and then he would teach. And sometimes he'd do his own extemporaneous song just off the top of his head about awakening and luminosity and emptiness, and just go, this is kind of awesome. This is why people like doing this practice. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as we get started. I also wanted to say that one of the things I try to do with these presentations is bring a number of different visuals and graphics to just sort of tell the story. And although there are some incredible murals of Milarepa's life, there aren't a lot of great images of those murals. And so I was like, wow, there's so many cool scenes. I want to be able to tell the story, because it's kind of an interesting story. And then I remembered that there's this insane comic book that was done in 1991 about Milarepa. It's awesome, by the way, by this practitioner, Eva Van Dam. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's use some of that. And then I also remembered that Nicholas Roerich, who is this gentleman on the statue right over here, who is one of the, as Milarepa would say, the heart son of PRS. He is one, he's maybe not the founder, but he is I don't know, he's kind of he's one of the peeps, one of the PRS holds the vision of what this place is like. And he was an incredible philosopher and artist. And he did these incredible paintings of the Himalayas and Tibet. And so we'll use some of that as well, including one he did in Milarepa. So just to kind of give a sense of, so when you start seeing comic strips, you'll be like, what is this? I've seen comic strips. Because of this. So to begin, I want to just speak about a couple of threads that you'll keep seeing coming back again and again as we talk tonight. These are, I would say, kind of core threads of Milarepa's story and the quality of the kind of person he was. Because if you, not only in Tibet, but in many different Buddhist traditions, Milarepa is sort of a superstar and is beloved and has a certain effect in the community, because not just he was an accomplished teacher, but it was sort of how he was accomplished, the things that he did and how he did them. And so I just want to talk just very quickly just about some threads here. And the main one is that he was an ordinary person. And this is actually a still from the 2011 film, Tibetan film, Milarepa, which is pretty fun to go see if you can find it. It's a little hard to find, but what's that?
It's good.
Okay.
They said they would make a sequel, but never happened.
No, he hasn't gotten to part 2. And there's something really important here about this ordinariness, because in Buddhism, there are a lot of origin stories of these great teachers in which, they're born out of a lotus flower and there's 700, rainbows happening when they're born. Hey. And so there's sort of this, they're magical already when they arrive. But not Milarepa. Milarepa is born into a wealthy family, but he's just a person like any of us. And yet, he has this journey over the period of his life that goes very dark and also completely transforms. And there's a way in which, and I'm not the only one to think this, but a lot of translators and commentators and people who have worked on Milarepa's writings and his songs, that they come back to this thing that what reverberates for people is that ordinariness. Like, if he did what he did, and he managed to transform it, well, then I can. I mean, yeah, I got problems, and I messed up, and I can't figure stuff out, and I feel lost, or I can't deal with my anger, or I can't do this or that. But Milarepa managed to overcome so much more than I have to deal with, and it sort of inspires people. There's that sense of, he's like us, I'm like him, even though he's this incredible practitioner and has this incredible story. So, also core to his story is this aspect of redemption, that he, as we'll see if you're not familiar with Milarepa's story, and what I always like to say is, if this is a brand new subject for you, I hope that the next hour and a half or so is interesting and awakens some curiosity about Milarepa. And if you know everything about Milarepa, also great. And then I hope that maybe there's a little morsel that was a surprise, or I gotta go read my book again. So this aspect of redemption, this aspect that no matter how deep and dark and lost we can get, we can transform that, we can move that, we can find our way out of that. Because Milarepa did just that, in a sense that despite his path, he was able to transform and completely rebalance. But there's also this aspect of renunciation, and we'll see, especially when he finally gets to the point of becoming a yogi and a practitioner, in which he lives in caves most of his life, with almost no belongings. This aspect of shedding the sort of worldly weight, this worldly things that we carry, the things that we get locked in on, our belongings, our habits and patterns, our people, that all of these things can at times be a distraction, and actually we lose our way. And so he very much advocates this aspect of renunciation of not only that, but also renouncing our ego, the ways in which we think of ourselves as solid, and we think of others as different than us, as separate to us. And core to his teaching is that we're not separate. In fact, we're completely interconnected. You'll also see this aspect of discipline plays a very strong part of his practice. That this takes effort and work. I think sometimes we think that we'll just, open our meditation app and I'll be fixed in 10 minutes and we're good to go. And that's maybe the first step. But for us to work and find a more deeper transformation, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes exertion. And so Milarepa definitely demonstrates that for us. And there's also this core thread of devotion. Devotion not only in this case to his teacher, but also to the lineage of practitioners that came before, as well as devotion to the practice, to these teachings and understanding the wisdom that is held in these particular teachings, or any wisdom teachings for that matter. That there's a commitment to learning and to understanding and to deepening. And so that takes a certain commitment and devotion to do that. So as we've talked about in the title, Song of Realization, and the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, this aspect of what a song of realization is. This is actually referring to the term Doha. Oh, hi. Oh no, it's okay. Come on in. Now this is the talk, not the AA meeting, so hopefully we just like to chat. Get more chairs. This is actually the Tibetan symbol for the throat chakra. And so Doha is a tradition that was brought to Tibet by the Mahasiddhas of India. It's a lyrical verse format of teaching, primarily from northern India in the 6th century. Although this practice, I believe, was present before that. But in a sense, the core aspect of Doha is a master singing spontaneously from their own immediate experience. about what they have realized, often giving instructions and guidance to the person they're singing to. The thing that makes Milarepa more unique in this sense, and we'll sort of see this, and I think again why he is so beloved, is that Milarepa would adjust and adapt his songs depending on who he was singing to. Because for him, it was more important to connect to the individual than be like, I'm just going to do the same song, and if you don't understand, tough luck. It was sort of, I want to understand who you are, and then the song I'll sing will mirror what we meet in the middle. So that way it reverberates in you, it resonates in you, you take that song with you, it changes you. And so this is again an aspect that's very unique, I think, to Milarepa, is that he was very sensitive to that, and he could adjust in that way. So that then the student or the person who hears it is like, oh, yeah, I understand that, right? It's not a talking down aspect. The other piece that I wanted to just speak to briefly, so that we understand kind of the context, especially if you're not familiar with Milarepa. So, in general, in Tibetan Buddhism, there are 4 main schools or lineages of practice in Tibetan Buddhism. There are a number of subgroups in these, but these are the 4, these are actually the lineage trees of the 4 main schools here. And I just want to briefly touch on them. We're not going to do too much so that we can get on to singing, because that's going to be the best part. But partially because I wanted to bring it up because Milarepa lives in a lineage that is a little peculiar, a little bit off the beaten path. When we sort of see his story unfold, you can see why he's from that lineage. They're a little bit more unconventional. And so the first lineage is actually the oldest lineage, the Nyingma lineage. Nyingma translates to ancient ones, and as I said, they're the oldest of the Tibetan lineages. They have a direct link to Padmasambhava, who was the reason why Buddhism came to Tibet and was able to sort of flourish in Tibet. They formed around the 8th century. And although the other lineages have a leader or a head that's kind of designated for that lineage, that school, the Nyingma generally doesn't. And Dzogchen tends to be the practice that's connected to the Nyingma tradition. I also bring this up because each of these schools slightly have different approaches to practice. Some prefer more practice, like do meditation first and then do some study. Others that encourage study first. The Nyingma tend to kind of do a bit of both at the same time. The youngest lineage is the Gelugpa lineage, and this is the lineage that the Dalai Lama all the Dalai Lamas have been from in this particular school. Although the Dalai Lama is not the head of the Gelugpa lineage. He's actually the spiritual head of all the lineages in Tibetan Buddhism and the Tibetan people. It is the Panchen Lama that is actually the head of the Gelugpa lineage. And we won't get into the Panchen Lama because then we would be talking about that all night. That's a bit of a juicy bit of story. And they formed around 1409. The Sakya lineage formed around 1073. They're the smallest of the 4, and the head of this lineage is Sakya Treason. The Gelugpas they tend to favor study a little bit more. You tend to go and do intensive memorization and study before you do things like meditation practice. They tend to kind of go about it differently. Sakya is a little bit more balanced. And then finally, the Kagyu lineage, which is actually the second oldest. So I went out of order, I apologize. It's actually Nyingma, Kagyu, Sakya, Gelugpa. But I wanted to end on the Kagyu because that's Milarepa's group. And Kagyu is translated as ear-whispered lineage, formed around about 1010. They're also referred to as the practice lineage. The Karmapa is the head of the Kagyu lineage. But the practice lineage here, this is something that's kind of important here, in that Milarepa is part of a lineage that very much favors go live in a cave and do a lot of intensive practice over a very extended period of time. It's not that book study and that aspect is not important, but the direct application of things is preferred. But the Kagyu also has a little bit of a wacky thing in that they're sort of the embodiment of crazy wisdom, which you might have heard before, kind of the crazy wisdom lineage. Which means that, and as you'll see in this story, that they're a little unconventional. And so Milarepa, the teachers that came before, Tilopa, Naropa, Marpa, Milarepa. Tilopa, for example, was taking Naropa and pushing him off roofs of buildings to show him how to connect to his body a little bit more. You know, wacky stuff like that. Like, push people off roofs. And then heals him, of course, immediately. So there's this very kind of, a little bit, as I said, unconventional approach here. Also, it's important for us to speak about Songyam Haruka, who was, let me see the dates, 1452 to 1507. We would probably not really have the collection of Milarepa's stories and songs if it wasn't for him. So he made it his life mission to collect all of the disparate stories and learnings that many different people have through Tibet and India about Milarepa. So there was a lot of information, but in the hands of a lot of people, all of whom didn't necessarily want to share it or didn't care, or just were in their own little group. And he actually went to great lengths and had to overcome quite a bit of resistance to actually collect those things. It was actually much more arduous than he expected. But he was able to, and in 1488, he completed these 2 volumes of teachings that are what we have today in terms of Milarepa's life and his teachings. And he actually, what I love is that the final collection of them, he put them together in Crystal Cave, which is one of Milarepa's caves that he practiced in. So it's kind of like, doing the Milarepa used to be here and putting it together. But he compiled this about 350 years after Milarepa's death. So there's this span of time here. So the 2 parts were meant to be read consecutively. The first is shorter, and you might be familiar with its title, which is The Life of Milarepa. There's been a couple of translations. There was one done, I think maybe 30 or 40 years ago, that's sort of the standard one. And the first part is shorter and is more of a telling, almost like a biography, from like birth to death. And the format of the book is, most of it is students asking Milarepa questions about his life, and then he tells a story. So Rinpoche, one of the students, says, "Oh, I heard that this happened to you." And he goes, "Oh yeah, okay, let me tell you about that." And then he goes and tells the story. The second volume is much more comprehensive and is mainly focused on when he leaves Marpa's tutelage and gets the empowerments he needs, and he goes and he spends the next 60 years living in caves and living in the mountains wild in Tibet and Nepal. And this is generally titled as the Collected Songs of Milarepa. The larger volume was first published as a kind of official volume about 50 years ago as the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. And this was done by a translator and practitioner, Dharma C.C. Chang. And this has been the definitive version for 50 years of these stories. But, and I think Kelly said that there's a new translation that's actually in the bookstore that came out in 2015, I think, that has honored that past work, but then updated, made some changes, some corrections in some of the translation. But the work itself in Tibetan is called Mila Gurlum. And actually in the book itself, even though the book is like 700 pages long, there's only about maybe 300 songs, maybe 320 songs. So 100,000 songs. They're going to go overstating. I mean, you might have sang that many songs, but not in this book, there aren't that many. And the word bum, B-U-M, in Tibetan means 100,000. But when there's a character before it, like gur, it actually means collection. It doesn't mean 100,000. And so one of the things that scholars have said is that they feel like that title, 100,000 Songs of Milarepa, is very similar to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, if you're familiar with that, which is actually the Bardo Todal, is what it's called in Tibetan. And that translates as liberation through hearing in the Bardo, which is a little different than the Tibetan Book of the Dead, right? But when it was first published, what was hot at the time was the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And the book, we call it Tibetan Book of the Dead, we're going to kill it, we're going to sell some of these. And so they just, who cares if it's not even called that? No one, right? No one speaks Tibetan. And same probably here in that either a misunderstanding of that word, or you're like, well, this is the collected songs of Milarepa. Doesn't sound very interesting, but 100,000 songs. It sounds awesome. So for the first part here, we're going to talk from this first volume it's the biography. And then we'll shift to the 100,000 songs volume, and then we'll sing some songs. So don't worry, we're going to sing some songs. But I just want to give you a context, especially if Milarepa is not a familiar person, so you kind of have the sense of this journey. So, finding a map of Tibet that can also show the places where Milarepa was is a bit of an adventure because the current map doesn't really exist. And other maps, this was somewhat close. Most of what we're going to, so he traveled, extensively around Tibet, but this area here is really where Milarepa spent a lot of time. This is Lhasa. Mount Everest is right around here. Mount Kailash is right around here, which is a sacred mountain in Tibet. And so, and he was born in the town of Kya-Nyasa-Gunpam. Sorry for my Tibetan language thing. So what we also have here too is, these are some of the panels actually from the comic book. I added them partially. This map down here is wonderful because she sort of plants some of the places that are important in Milarepa's life. And as you can see where it says Mount Everest and Mount Kailash. So you could take that map and kind of turn it around. If Mount Everest is right around here and Mount Kailash is right around here. And so his early life, his father, Mila Sherak Gyaltsen, was a wealthy businessman and very successful businessman in his village and area in Tibet. And this is just this sequence of introducing his family. Mila was actually a family surname, and it derived from the expression Mila Mila, which was uttered in fear and surrender by a demon exorcised by Milarepa's great-grandfather. And so that name carried on in the family for generations. And it said that Sheriff Gyaltsen was traveling on business at the time when he heard of the birth of his son. And he was so happy to hear the news that he named his son Topa Ga, meaning joyous to hear. So even when he was born, there was sort of a hint of maybe what was to come, even though that's not why he was called that. Right? He didn't come out and his first baby cry was beautiful to hear. Right? Also translated as delightful to hear. And so this is 1040. So Topaga, or Tupaga, I believe the umlaut makes it more like that. And he also had a younger sister, Peta Gonki. So things were kind of happy. He was in a very wealthy situation. It was like life was good. But at age 7, his father became ill. This is an image of his father. And his father realizes he's not going to survive whatever this illness is. And so he gathers the core family together and he writes a very detailed will of here's what I want to have happen. My family will be taken care of. They will get all of my possessions and land. And then when Topaga becomes of age, then he would inherit as the son, etc. And he brings everyone together, especially Topaga's uncle and aunt, because they're very important in this sort of close family. And the uncle and aunt say, no problem, of course. Yes, everyone will be taken care of, we got it, no problem. Well, the father dies, and immediately, and that's his mom's name, Nyansa Kargin. The father dies, and immediately the uncle and the aunt take everything. They take all the money, they take all the property, and basically tell Milarepa and his sister and mother, now you are our servants. They would take all of their belongings away, and they spend the next years being beaten and put into servitude under the kind of iron fist of the aunt and uncle, who treat them horribly. And that panel on the bottom right, that's actually from an older Tonka painting. In the corner is them being flogged. So they go from a life of comfort and a life of like support and good to the complete opposite in a day. And it's very, very hard, especially on his mother, who this really plants this seed of resentment and anger in her, which will result in some things that are going to really go bad. When he's 15, his mother holds a great banquet with proceeds from land that she inherits from another family member. So she takes this money and she invites everyone who knew the father. And the special honor guests are the aunt and uncle. And halfway into the gathering, she gets up in front of everybody and reads the will that has been forgotten for 7 years. And pleads to the community, like, this is a wrong, you need to right this wrong. She pleads to the uncle and aunt, why are you doing this? You can't do this. This has to change. And the only result at the end of it is the uncle gets up and beats all three of them in front of the whole community. No one does anything. Although afterwards, several of the community do say to the mother and Milarepa and the sister, come and live with us. Like, you at least be out of servitude. We'll be protected and we'll take care of you. And the mother will have nothing to do with it. She's at this point is so angry and so now longing for revenge that she has a different plan. And she brings Milarepa aside, Tompaga aside, and says that she has been saving up offerings. And she wants him and his friends to go and study with a sorcerer to learn black magic. We're going to get back at our family for what they have done. And he doesn't really want to do that, and then she basically threatens to take her life. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to do this, I guess. And so he goes with 5 of his friends to go study with a sorcerer named Yungtung Chodgyal. And they spend several months there learning, but after a while his friends aren't really interested anymore and they decide to leave. But he says, I want to stay. And the teacher asks him, well, why? If your friends are leaving. And he said, well, he tells him the whole story and the fact of what his mother has said, and he says, I haven't learned enough. I haven't learned the level of magic that I need for what my mother wants me to do. And so he goes, okay. He feels actually impressed that he's willing to continue on. And so because of that, he sends him to another guru, another sorcerer, Yangten Gyatso. And he sends him to him specifically because this gentleman is trained in a particular type of black magic that works with this energy called Zadon Marnak, which is the red, black-faced Rahu, which you see over there. So hardcore, like very dark magic. And this teacher says, build a meditation hut, I'm going to give you this particular practice, and when you start seeing something, let me know. And in a couple of weeks, Milarepa starts seeing, if you actually see in this drawing here, those kind of faces. You just might see people's faces on the mountains there. He begins to see visions of his family members dying, and kind of as almost like a premonition of what's going to happen. And so he's kind of curious, well, I wonder if this is really working. And so he goes to his village. And he goes on the day that his uncle and aunt are having a big celebration, a wedding celebration for the uncle and aunt's son and a new bride. And there's this huge building that's like a banquet hall. And when he gets there, he notices that all of the livestock have turned into massive scorpions and spiders. And they descend upon this gathering house and they tear it to the ground and kill 35 people. So the fruition of this revenge is extreme. The uncle and aunt survive, probably for intentional, like they almost intentionally survive to see and witness their son and new daughter-in-law and 33 other people who were their family being killed, crushed horribly in this accident. And Milarepa, and this is one of the Tibetan things I'm learning. And Milarepa is pretty upset that this is, I don't think even he realized that it was going to, this is what would happen. But it's happened. What doesn't help is that then his mother goes out into the public square and gloats. And he said, you see, you shouldn't have messed with us, and now you're all dead. And my son did this, and oh, that's not good. And the entire village starts hunting for Milarepa, who's hightails it out, but not before his mother gives him money and a letter with a further mission, which is to go up to a spot above the village where all of their fields are, and she commands him to pull out from the sky a horrible hailstorm. And he does this incantation, and this massive storm comes through and destroys the village's crops. But while that's happening, the villagers catch up to him and see him do this, so they know that he's done this as well. And so he manages to escape. And it's at this point that he is overcome with regret and remorse and realizing that this has gone too far. And not only that, but the sorcerer who taught him all of that is also pretty oh, this went a lot farther. I thought we were teaching you a little bit, and you're like, this is a lot worse than even I thought. And so he agrees to support Milarepa in going to a Dzogchen master, Lama, to study. Fortunately, maybe not the best teacher, because Lama is like, oh yeah, I do Dzogchen, it's totally easy, and you're going to be enlightened in no time. You don't really have to do very much. And so Milarepa takes that literally and goes and sleeps for 2 months. He just crashes, and when nothing happens in 2 months, he goes, what is this magical practice you have? And in the story, when Ramtin realizes, I'm actually kind of a crap teacher. You're actually showing me that I'm really not very good at my job. I think, let's send you to Marpa. Marpa will be much better. And as soon as Milarepa hears the name Marpa, something kind of clicks. And he's like, this is what I need to study with. And actually, right as that is said, Marpa and his wife, this is the panel from the comic book, have a prophetic dream about Milarepa. So they even know that he is coming. They have this vision, and they know that this incredible practitioner is coming, even though he's bringing a pretty serious situation. And this is really the start of a very arduous path for Milarepa. Because Marpa knows that he's coming. So Marpa is a household yogi, so it's not uncommon for great teachers to also be landowners and businessmen, or businesswomen, where they live a normal life and they're also these very advanced practitioners. And Marpa was exactly that. And so, as the story goes, Marpa would never be out plowing fields he's the boss. He's someone else to do that. But he's out plowing the fields when Milarepa finally arrives. And Milarepa says, I'm looking for Marpa. And Marpa, not pretending to be someone else, goes, oh yeah, he's in the house. Why don't you finish plowing the field? And I'll go get him. Or you come in when you're done. And so he makes Milarepa plow the fields for a while. And then Milarepa finally comes in going, I'm trying to meet Marpa, and then sees the guy who was plowing the fields earlier and goes, okay, I see. I see how this works. And so Marpa basically agrees to teach him, but not until he does these projects. And this is kind of done intentionally to start burning off the incredible weight of karmic action that he has committed. Like, it's not just you get off scot-free, like there has to be a rebalancing. And so he makes Milarepa, he said, I'll give you the teachings, but if you could, I need like a 9-story tower built with bricks. So if you could just work on that, and then we'll get to it when it's done. But the thing is that Milarepa would get about 2/3 of the way done, and then Marpa would show up and go, I didn't say there. It has to be put over there. So you gotta use the same rocks, they don't mind more rocks. You would take the whole thing apart, move it to the other location and start building it, and then you'd be 2/3 of the way done, and then Marpa would come out and go, oh, no, I didn't say there. I said over here. It has to be done over here. And so he did this actually 5 times. But that is that's actually what he built, is the 9-story tower finally. But this whole time, Milarepa is sort of giving up and feeling like this is not going to happen. This guy is just kind of messing with me. He's making me build these towers and taking them apart. And so, in the stories, Dakmima, his wife, is kind of crucial in keeping Milarepa engaged. Like, there's a purpose and a reason for this. And so, just don't give up hope. And so he doesn't. Until finally, just before he's about to give up completely, Marpa says, okay, there was a purpose here, but we had to kind of get the soil prepared before we can even have you do anything else, before anything else would come to fruition. And so he gives him empowerments, and also gives him his name, Mila Dorje Gelsen. The Repa part, Milarepa, that actually comes in later. R-E-P-A means cotton clad, and represented the kind of very simple garments that Milarepa often wore. And because he lived pretty much, there isn't a story where he's like wearing almost nothing and emaciated, and so that sort of becomes associated with his name, and he becomes Milarepa. And the Mila is the family name from his father and from his great-grandmother. And this really starts this life of serious practice. These are all Milarepa's caves, so that is actually where a cave he practiced in Nepal. Marpa basically says to him, you need to go and practice in these wild, hard, difficult places. This is the only way that this is going to transform. And gives him very difficult tasks, but he does it. For 60 years, he is practicing in very rugged, harsh conditions, with barely any food, no clothing, and becomes this incredible yogic master. These desolate places. And as he says here, O Marpa, bless me so I may stay in the solitude. Though I feel lonely, let me keep my seat until I know my own true meaning. This is this aspiration that he takes. You often will see Milarepa depicted green like this, and that was from a period of time in which all he was eating was nettles for several years. Nettle tea, and then just eating the nettles so that his skin turned green and he becomes very emaciated. But again, this aspect of discipline and my teacher has said this is what I need to do, and so I'm going to put all of my effort and energy. It doesn't matter what else I do. What mind is sung to the shepherd boy, sang Gao. Sugar candy tastes so sweet, but just hearing about it won't give you that taste. Think all about it, but you still won't taste. If you want to taste, you have to use your tongue. It's the same with the essence of mind. Another person can point it out to you, and you'll understand it, but won't see it yet. So take that knowledge and look yourself. When you're introduced to native mind, take what you've learned and look for yourself. If you look, you'll see it for sure. O shepherd boy, work with mind like this. And so we'll shift now into the second volume of the 100,000 Songs. And this volume, that's again about 700 pages, is really all focused on his life as a practitioner. So he's in these wild areas, he's teaching, he's singing songs, because this is a way in which he starts offering and working with his practice, is being able to sing these sacred songs. The book itself is put into 3 cycles that collect different stories that are of a different particular theme. And this first cycle, that's the first maybe 15, 16 chapters, is the binding under oath of harm-inflicting spirits. And there are all these stories in which he's working with kind of really intense, dark energy that's, in a sense, his own mind. The obstacles and ways in which he is stuck in his own suffering. And we'll begin with chapter 1. What's kind of crazy about this book is that it doesn't like start day 1 when he first goes into retreat. It's literally, okay, year 10, like you just launch into the middle somewhere. So, and then it goes all over the place. Apparently his first retreat, he lived in a cave for 11 months with a candle burning on the top of his head, which seems kind of, okay, all right. I've never heard that one yet. And this first chapter is actually kind of a quintessential story of Milarepa. And we won't sing a song from this, but I thought it was important to talk about it quickly just because it's kind of this perfect story about Milarepa. And it is called Mila Gathers Wood. Mila Gathers Wood. And so he is in this incredible space called Chunglang Garuda Fortress, so referred to in some of the translations as a red rock valley. And as often happens in these stories, Milarepa is so intense in practice that he forgets to eat, he forgets to get firewood, he forgets to like wear clothes sometimes, like he just gets so involved in it. And so this is no different, and he realizes, I'm kind of hungry, but I have no wood, because I've run out of firewood, because I've not been paying attention. And so he gets up and he goes out of his cave and goes and collects wood. And as you've seen, what he's often wearing is this kind of long robe. And so he's wandering outside of his cave, picking up pieces of wood and putting them, kind of holding them in the skirt, so to speak. And it's also pretty common that he's usually not wearing very much, if anything, underneath, right? Because he's up in the mountains, no one's going to really see, right? And so he's doing this, and he has his 10 or so pieces kind of collected in his skirt. And out of nowhere, this massive wind comes up and blows the wood everywhere and blows his gown all over the place, and the wood scatters everywhere. And there's then this whole sequence that's sort of right out of Three Stooges skits or Charlie Chaplin, where every time he goes to pick up the wood and try to put it back, the wind blows again, and he's trying to hold the thing down because he doesn't want people to see his whatevers, and then he's dropping the wood, and then he's picking up the wood and then dropping it while he holds the skirt down, and this goes on for several minutes until finally, just in exasperation, he's like, even though I am in retreat for so long, I have not abandoned my self-claiming. What's the use in Dharma or practice without giving up self-claiming? If you want my clothes, take them. If you want this wood, take it. He just screams at the wind in kind of this futile moment, collapses on the ground, because he's also realized he hasn't eaten in like a week. And he's actually, you ever had that moment when I've actually really dehydrated and I can barely stand up. And he faints, completely cold out. And when he wakes up, the wood is scattered all over the place. His robe is hanging in a tree, because he's kind of sitting there buck naked on the ground. His thing is over there, and he's like, okay. And he sits, he meditates, and he feels completely disillusioned. This is sort of this dark, like, heavy moment of like, I'm completely messing up everything. And feels despair. And while he sits there, he stares out onto this beautiful, like, cloudscape. And in the distance, he sees a cloud a sort of beautiful cloud that's right where Marpa roughly lives. And he sees that and he begins to think about Marpa and his wonderful teacher and all the people that he used to practice with when they were living, around Marpa, and he feels suddenly very happy at first, but then feels really sad and starts singing a song in which he's crying and feels sad. He misses everybody and he's an idiot and he can't do anything. He's the worst practitioner and he can't even, gather wood, and it's a mess. And he finishes singing the song and the sky reverberates in front of him, and appearing in front of him on a white lion in the sky is Marpa. And Marpa says to him, what is this mournful song you're singing? Don't you realize that I'm here all the time. We are connected in this very deep level. I know what's happening. You don't need to be so lost. You don't need to feel like you're alone, because you're not. You have this incredible lineage supporting you. And this inspires Milarepa, and he feels so much better. And he sings a song about how happy he's feeling, and he feels more confident, and he kind of feels inspired. He's like, all right, this is going to be okay. And he gathers up the bits of wood, and he feels really good. And he goes back to his cave, and the cave is filled with demons. There's 5 demons that have taken over his cave. And they are like destroying the cave. Now, I tried to find an image of, from a traditional tantra, couldn't find it. AI came up with the 5 demons. So I was like, you don't know Milarepa, right? It was like, oh yeah, in the cave, with the demons. Yeah, I can come up with some demons. So,
Great.
and so these 5 demons, one of them is sitting on his bed and teaching 2 of the other ones, like a karma teacher, and they've already destroyed the place. There's a 4th demon that's cooking over in the corner and throwing stuff around and clashing plates and stuff. And then there's a 5th one reading through all of his texts and kind of disrupting everything. So it's madness. And he's kind of doesn't know what to do. And of course, when he walks in, they all kind of turn at him. And they're described as having saucer eyes. These huge, kind of menacing eyes and teeth, and they're terrifying. And he doesn't know what to do. And he's standing there and he realizes, you know what? I'm so good about doing offerings to the local spirits whenever I come to a new place, and I must have not done it well. And so he launches into this very, beautiful honorary song to the spirit land and all this stuff, and he's very, singing this beautiful song, and all it does is 2 more join. They're like, whatever, dude. Like, what are you talking about? And so he's like, okay, all right, what do I do? And I feel, I know what I need to do. I need to be more wrathful. I'm going to get these demons out of here. I'm going to show them how a great practitioner I am. That doesn't do anything. They just get more menacing. He's like, I know what I need to do. To get these beings out of here, I need to teach them. If I just teach them the Dharma, do a Dharma talk, you're going to totally understand and they're going to leave. Well, that actually really just makes them more upset, and they're making more noise and breaking things up even more. And he's really kind of at a loss. He doesn't know what to do. But then he remembers this teaching that Marpa gave him, which that demons are just anything that blocks us from true understanding. That all phenomena are one's own mind. And the mind is luminous emptiness. Therefore, to take these demons or obstacles as external and delight over making them leave is useless. It's like forcing out our own mind. And so he sings another song to give them courage, and then he charges in and joins them. Because that's the best way to work with this energy, is to befriend it, is to become its ally, to understand why it's in the cave with you, not try to fight and remove it. And the demons are definitely not thrilled with this approach, because they kind of freak out. He's going in let me help you cook. Do you need more onions? That's a great text over there. You're going to love that. It's really good. You can see that one too. It totally freaks them out. And in fact, gets them so upset that they actually combine into one massive demon that is even bigger and is really wanting to eat him alive. And there are a couple of versions of the translation, but the one I love is that finally it's drooling and it's it wants to eat him, and he finally goes, okay, fine. You want to eat me? Go for it. And he puts his head into the head of the demon. And when he does, it vanishes. So, this aspect of, however you want to define demon, right? It's that aspect of our mind, maybe that voice in our head that's like, stupid idiot. Oh, you're doing that again? Oh, you look stupid in that outfit. Or blah, blah, blah. Whatever that is that rolls in our head, right? And we battle it. But this approach, Milarepa, is encouraging and remembering, well, what if I actually be curious about what that voice is trying to do? What does it want and what does it need? And what would happen if that voice got what it needed? Because usually we misinterpret that information. And we think it's separate to us as opposed to actually being connected to it and trying to understand it. And then I saw this and I said, I have hope for humanity. That someone made a Lego Milarepa in the cave with demons. Like, yes! I was so happy because they're all different demons. There's a skeleton over there. I don't even know what this is. But how is there a Milarepa Lego going? I just love it. So I had to put that in there. But I think there's hope for us all. Okay. So, we're about to sing a song. That's what we say. So chapter 3, the Song of the Snow. This takes place at a mountain retreat called Wachi Snow Mountain. And he had studied there before, practiced there before. But in this story, he's down in the village that's down in the valley below the cave. And he's there for many days, and finally he's like, I need to go into retreat. And the villagers don't want him to go because they love having him around. The thing he says to them is like, it's not a good idea for me to stay here. Like, I need to be in retreat. The more I'm in this sort of everyday space, that didn't work so well in my other life. It actually, created a lot of suffering. And so it's better that I go and put my energy into transformation and into practice. And so they escort him back up to the cave. And when they get back to the village, a huge storm comes in and blocks off the paths for 6 months. So much so that the villagers are convinced he's dead. There's no way he lived. He has to be dead. And they wait until the snow melts a little bit, and they go up to go find him. They're assuming, in fact, they do a funeral for him. And as they go up about 2/3 of the way, there's a resting place, and they're sitting and wondering what's happened to his body. And they look up, and there's a snow lion, like intently checking them out. Maybe the snow lion ate them. I bet the snow lion totally ate them. And it disappears. And they get up to the cave, and before they enter the cave, they hear someone singing. And they enter, and there's Milarepa singing, and he's cooking a meal. And he's like, it took you long enough. You were just down a little landing there. Like, what took you so long? No, we didn't see you. Like, yeah, I was right there looking at you. No, you weren't. Wait, were you the lion? Were you the leopard? Sorry, the snow leopard? And he's like, yeah, of course. I'm at a point where, I can take some different forms. I can, I might show up in a different way. And that kind of amazes them, and they're very happy. And everyone's very happy. And they convince him to come back down to the village because everyone thinks he's dead. And they gather, and this is actually from traditional Tibetan dances that happen every year to celebrate his life. And this particular moment, because they're so happy, he sings a song, they're more happy. He's so happy that they're happy, they're all leaping up and down. So he starts leaping up and down. And as he's leaping up and down, the rock that he's standing on actually starts to kind of shimmer and shake, almost like gelatin. And every time his foot hits the rock, the footprints appears, hits the rock again, hits the rock again, so that when he's done, there's actually all of his footprints, multiple footprints embedded in the rock. These are footprints and handprints from places where he practiced. Because he would put his hand into the rock and melt his hand into the rock. Assuming you want to believe that. I'll leave that to you. And so, they're so happy, and they're amazed now that this rock has all these footprints. They're not sure that out. And they want to know, well, teach us more. And so, he does, and he sings the song, the profound, definitive meaning, the song of the snowy rage. And we're going to sing it. So pass these around if you want. These are actually all the songs we're going to sing. We're going to sing 3, hopefully. I think we have time. Right? We're doing okay? How are we doing? All right, we're going to sing as we could. Now, Kempo has been very kind in his life to get groups of people at retreats to sing. So we have all these great recordings of people singing. So we'll sing along with them. It's kind of like Dharma karaoke, right? And I will have the words will also be on the screen as well. But, I'll wait till everyone gets some. And then hopefully this will work. This is the moment of truth. Will it all work? So logging out, of course. We did really want to do this, did you? Yeah. Does everyone have? There, I tried to do them so that there's 2 pages. Okay. I tried to lay them so they were alternating, but maybe I messed it up. Sorry we didn't have sequence. So we'll sing this first song, Profound Definitive Meaning, sung on the Snowy Range. Thank you. And by the way, don't worry how you sound. You just sing it out. Don't worry about if you think you have a good voice or a bad voice, because it doesn't matter. It's about singing the song and connecting to the song. Everyone good? All right. person who wrote a lot of the books, I think used to be a pastor, so they're a little, a little drony, although there is a pirate song coming up. So you get the sense, kind of, he sings this song then to kind of mirror what's been talked about and why he's able to kind of put footprints in rock. But it's maybe think about who we truly are and what the phenomenal world is. Cycle 2 section is about 20-something chapters, and it's the ripening and liberation of the fortunate heart, sons, and daughters. So these are all chapters that are connected to students that he met and connected with, and then they became his students. And we'll talk just briefly about chapter 15 and meeting seven Milarepa. In this particular story, he's been practicing at a place called Jamtago, and he's headed actually to another place called Sri Mountain. And he stops at an inn in the northern part of Yarrow, which is in central Tibet near Assam. And at the inn, he meets this merchant, Naropa. And as often happens when he's in those settings, he goes and he begs for alms because he doesn't have any money. And when he does, he goes up to Norbu, and Norbu says, if you yogis would make a living yourself, right, instead of begging from others, you know what I mean? Like, you'd be much happier. Like, this whole begging thing, you need to get a job. and so Milarepa says, right now, you are happy with all that you have. But what you don't consider is that in the future, it will cause you to suffer. Listen to my song. And so, this is another one of these paintings by Buddhist. It's so incredible, it's amazing. And so, we will sing the song, 8 Things to Remember. This is also a little drony, but it's good, because we're connecting to the impermanence of things. And so, at the moment you are fond of family relations, you surround yourself with relatives and friends, but when time to go has come, you'll have to leave them. Kin and dear ones, every last one. Are you aware that this is what will happen? You've got to remember, keep it well in mind. At the moment you admire birds and helpers, you surround yourself with children and good things. But when your time to go has come, you'll leave without them. Empty-handed and stark-naked you'll depart. Are you aware that this is what will happen? You've got to remember, keep it well in mind. At the moment you are fond of material comforts, you surround yourself with the status of success. But when your time to go has come, your body will fail you, and it's fit for nothing more than to put it around. Well, it's true. Are you aware that this is what will happen? You'll do well to remember and keep it when you sing the song with Kempo, Sultram, he walks around and he'll do you eat the food you're eating, you think you have status, and you like walk around like, oh, you think you're a big person, well, you're gonna die. It's not all gonna be what you think. What's that?
Does he sing in Tibetan?
He sings it in Tibetan. Like he doesn't really have much, he doesn't speak much English, but he knows what we're singing in English. Like he can understand it, but he doesn't speak a lot.
I'm sure there's a song like that.
No, it's a little different. And when I first heard this, I was starting to work in hospice, and this song was like perfect. You sing this all the time, and most of my visits with people would be like, "What? I should get control over it all." And, people struggling with that. My body is failing. My money is disappearing. My life is falling apart because we put all this energy into that. Like it's always going to be there. It's always going to be stable, and yet it falls apart at those times. And so I love this song just because it's kind of cheeky. And after he sings it, the merchant that he sung it to is like, I've never thought about things that way. And the merchant completely changes his life and goes in a completely different direction after that. Because again, Milarepa sings to him and what would maybe make impact to him as a person. Not, I'm going to do some very advanced teaching about emptiness to you. Okay, great, dude, but what does that do for me? Instead, he finds a way to resonate with me. So this is actually the painting of Naropa that is And so chapter 44 is about Ligor Chara. At the end of that other chapter, he meets that other student, and the story is to sort of tell us how he meets the person. And the same with this story. So in this particular story, Milarepa is near a monastery where the monks don't like him. He hears that they don't like him. They think he's a nihilist. And so they think, we don't like this Milarepa guy. He's poo-poo. We don't like him at all. And he's like, oh, okay. And he happens to be walking nearby, and so he just visits. Like, hey, I want to just say what's going on. Like, why don't you like me? What's going on? And as soon as he arrives, they attack him. They're so angry at him. And this is kind of this interesting piece of how the different lineages, certainly in Buddhism, where it's like, no, our way is the right way. Oh no, our way has to be the right way. You're wrong, I'm right. We don't do that anywhere else, of course, right? In the world. And so, but what happens is every time they attack him or try to push him around, like nothing happens. He doesn't have any injuries. They push him, he's like unmovable. He's like trying to move a boulder. And they get so frustrated because they don't understand. At one point, they're tying ropes to him, trying to hold him out, and they can't even move him. And if they want in one place, he's in another place. They go over here, he's over there. And finally, they're like, "What? We don't understand. Why? Like, what is this with you, Milarepa? What's going on?" And he says, "Well, since you say that I'm a nihilist, when I'm killed, it doesn't exist. When I'm beaten, it doesn't exist. When I'm dragged inside, it doesn't exist. When I'm kicked outside, it doesn't exist. All of this because of the fixation on samsara, this world of suffering, and nirvana, this place of sort of transformation. It's the fixation that those are two different things. And because you do that, you don't understand maybe the true nature of reality." And he sings some songs to them. And one of the monks, Ligor Chara, who's in the group, is inspired and wants to study with Milarepa. And he realizes that he thinks that Milarepa would be more popular if he was a little more conventional, because Milarepa's kind of like does his own thing. And so he goes to Milarepa and says, "Look, like, you're gonna have the best YouTube channel. If you just like clean up a little bit, get some followers and when I read that, I was like, oh, it's kind of like now. Like, you would have the most influence, you get more money, you'd be cooler if you just like, can be a little more conventional, not so weird all the time. And so Milarepa goes, oh, okay. Well, let me sing you a song about why I think maybe I shouldn't do that. And that's our next song, which is the appearance and sound like reflection and echo. And this is the pirate song. So you'll notice in the lyrics that every time it says ho ho, well, that's time for a pirate cheer. Okay? You'll get it when you hear it first time. Just saying, give you a little warning that feel pirate-like if you want to. That's some kind of pirates. Hear the things that people say are just echoes. So I don't let them get in the way of conduct of yogic pursuits. I've tossed away those pretenses of trying to look good. So reputation you can go, ho ho, wherever you please. I've come to know that food and wealth are all illusory. I've tossed away all trying to lay my hands on things like these. Whatever it is I haven't got, I'm not ready for that. So rental fortune you can go, oh, oh, wherever you please. And knowing that gratitude and service are magical animations. All these scholars and students are everywhere around, trying to flatter and trying to court them, something I do not do. So ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome to go, ho, ho, please. So I'm in the natural state, which is equality. Attachment and aversion are just causes of suffering. I've got the road of toxic tortured states of mind away. So family and acquaintances can go, oh, oh, please. Sing within the Dharma taught that's free of fabrication. It's fabricating all your clinging and makes your own suffering. Receive the iron chains, I let them drop away. So great state of mind, just go, oh, oh, wherever you please. And here within the luminous light, the nature of mind itself. The stains of thought, yes, these are not here anywhere to be seen. I've tossed examination and analysis away. So terms that try to formulate mind, just go, oh, oh, where you please. Get tired. And so he continues for decades to travel in the mountains, to have deeper revelations and understanding of practice, teaching as he goes. It is said that one of the things that he does is perfects the practice of Tummo. This is it's literally translated as inner fire. And a rite of passage actually for a lot of Tibetan monks is that when you're at a certain point, you're put in a frozen blanket and stuck out in a snowbank. And literally by channeling and realigning your inner chakra and energy, you can melt and dry the blanket and like melt the snow around you. And it's one of the reasons why Milarepa is actually able to survive in a lot of these places, is because he can radiate at 130 degrees, almost like an eagle, but like has a higher body temperature. So even when it's in the snowbank, it's nice and warm. And so this is a practice that he's known for perfecting. There's also, there are stories in this collection about him flying, that his practice advances to such a point where the notion, especially in Tibetan, well, Buddhism in general, but in Tibetan practice, this aspect of being able to fly or put your hand in a rock or things like that is not impossible. It's just because you recalibrate your understanding of the phenomenal world and what's possible. And so flying is no more impossible than anything else. It's how we block ourselves to think it's not possible. He has two main students at the end. Rinchimpa, who ends up not being the lineage holder that takes over after he dies. But Rinchimpa is a very accomplished practitioner. And I wanted to add this little story. Right as, maybe just before Milarepa dies, he sends Rinchimpa on a long journey. And he imparts all these teachings and things to him and sends him off. They're staying in a valley, and so Rinchimpa gets all the way up to the top of the valley, and he turns back to look one more time, and see his teacher. And Milarepa goes, "Hey, can you come back? I had something else I wanted to tell you." And so he walks all the way back down the valley and has another session with Milarepa. And Milarepa's like, "Here's the thing I need to tell you. It's the most important, more than anything else." And Rinchimpa's like, "Oh, okay." And he kind of closes his eyes and opens them. And when he opens them, Milarepa has lifted up his gown and is showing him his calloused butt. And it basically says that your butt should look like this, calloused from sitting and doing meditation for days and days and days. That is what's going to help you reach where your goal. It is practice, practice, and more practice. Right? That's a very famous Milarepa, like, "Hey, callous butt." Gampopa actually, his other student, becomes someone who takes the lineage. So when you look at the lineage tree, it tends to be Milarepa, Gampopa, and then it goes from here. In terms of his last days, he lives well into his 80s, teaching, wandering all over. Then at one point, just before his death, there is a geshe, a prominent teacher, Satpula, who's very jealous of Milarepa and convinces a colleague of them to poison Milarepa for a piece of valuable turquoise. But Milarepa kind of knows that this plan is happening. And he also knows that the geshe has no intention of paying that person the turquoise. He's going to get them to poison him and then, rip them off. And so he arranges it so that this person gets the turquoise first, because he kind of knows what's happening. And then this poor person brings him this poisoned food, and immediately handing it to him, she's sobbing and like, I got to tell you what happened, and this is what really happened. And I don't know, I feel really terrible. And he's like, "It's okay, I know this was going to happen." And part of it was that it was important for you to get that turquoise. And so this aspect of an advanced teacher kind of seeing where our paths are going, even if we don't necessarily, is that it actually is important because also this teacher needed to do this. He actually needed to poison me for something else to happen, right? This is what I mean by crazy wisdom, unconventional wisdom. And so he eats the poison because he says that normally it wouldn't hurt me, but I know that my time is up and over. I've accomplished what I needed. And so he eats the poison and gathers his students. And over the next several weeks, he's doing teachings and imparting teachings to different students. And at one point, the geshe, who had been the one who basically was trying to poison him, came to give his respects. It's in quotes in the story. And he even says, "Oh, if I could take your illness, I would take your illness, Milarepa," thinking that Milarepa wouldn't even be able to give him the illness anyway, because he doesn't think we're having it. And Milarepa goes, "Well, I could give it to you, but you're not actually going to be able to handle it if I do." And it's just like, "You're just hot. You don't know what you're talking about." And Milarepa goes, "Well, okay, let's. I will transfer this illness into this doorway. I'm just going to send the illness just into this inanimate object." And when he does, the doorway literally cracks and crumbles over the weight of the intensity of the illness that Milarepa is, basically because he's been poisoned. And even then the Geshe thinks it's all kind of, it's just a part of the trade. It's not part of the trade. You didn't really just do that. And so Milarepa goes, okay, you want a little bit? Okay, I'll transfer a little bit into you. And as soon as he does, the Geshe collapses on the floor, writhing in pain. And Milarepa goes, I haven't even given you like even a portion of this, of what I'm actually holding. Which is, but as soon as he does this, there's something that happens. The Geshe's like, take it away, take it away, take it away, and immediately confesses to what he has done. And also immediately gives away all of his wealth and belongings. And it's said that actually this Geshe then becomes this incredible practitioner and generous person in the community. He completely reverses everything. And Milarepa, and people are like, why did you let that happen? And Milarepa said, well, I knew it would be important for me to stay long enough for the Geshe to actually come and apologize or see what he had done, because he needs to go do this work. And he wouldn't have done that if I hadn't sort of let this happen. Like it had to happen this way. And so shortly after, he goes to a place called Chuar to die, dissolves into rainbow light. There's two different, there's 1123 or 1135, there's kind of a variances to like when he actually died. But his practice is still an example, as I said, for people today. And Tibetans especially, there's this really just close heart space with Milarepa because of this kind of average person who transcends to this incredible space. And so I thought, so I thought as a way to end the talk tonight, so when I, back in like 2000, I did a trip to Kathmandu. I lived in Nepal for a little bit and in India. And I was really fascinated by the Milarepa songs, but also in Tibet and in Tibetan practice, songs in general and singing singing songs that are about faith and practice are kind of part of the tradition. And so I was really interested in that, and still am. And I happened, the first day we arrived, I met a teacher, Anya Rinpoche, who had just come to Kathmandu and was working to get to the United States. In fact, he lives in Colorado right now. And he loved songs too. And so he was like, well, I can teach you all these songs. And so he started teaching me all these different Tibetan songs, not just the Milarepa songs, but also other songs. And so I thought, one of the first songs that he taught me, thought might be a nice way to sort of close it. It's not a Milarepa song, but there's a certain quality to it that kind of, I think it fits the energy and the heart space of what Milarepa was trying to do. This particular song is a bit of a protest song. It was written by a woman from the region of Amdo in Tibet. And one of the things that made this song very famous was that she wrote it so that the Chinese at least would not understand that she was talking about the Dalai Lama and other kind of important figures. She wrote it in the sort of the symbology of Buddhism. And so it's, although it's a protest song, it also to me really speaks to the sort of, when you talk, at least the times that I've talked to Tibetans, there's this sort of certain sadness in their heart for the loss of Tibet, or the changing of Tibet. It's still there, but it's transformed into something else, and this longing for it to be as it was. So this particular song, and I'll put as I'm going to sing it in Tibetan. So, and I apologize if you speak Tibetan, it will not be great Tibetan. I do okay with Tibetan. But the song follows this structure, which is basically, last night I had a dream. And then each verse is describing a dream that she has. And it's dreaming of Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, and dreaming of going to the stupa and seeing people doing kora, doing practice around the stupa. And she also has a vision of the Tala, which is where the Dalai Lama used to live, and seeing rainbows appear over there, and seeing a Dakini, which is the embodiment of feminine energy and wisdom, appear. And then the last verse, she goes to a monastery and talks to the Pachamama. And so, but I'll also put that, I'll put the lyrics up. Other challenges that it's not kind of challenging. If I don't start in the right pitch, then it's going to get interesting. And when he taught it to me, he sang it really high. I'm like, no way, I can't sing that. So I do it a little lower. Last night I had a dream. And so each verse starts, Tam Sum Yahweh Me Lam, which means last night I had a dream. So I have to take a glass of water. Tam Sum Yahweh Me Lam, La Saboko Lenga, Gang Sing Baba Me Sum, Ajo Ishin Nongri, Asha Jana Me Sum, La Saboko Lenga, Sing Baba Me Sum, Jo Ishin Hui, Aja Jana Me Sum, Aja Jana Me Sum, Aja Tam Sum Yahweh Me Lam, Po Talare Sela, Ja Sang Sharwa Me Sum, Amachi Kuki Lamwe, Ajal Dargua Me Sum, Po Talare Sela, Ja Sang Sharwa Me Sum, Machi Kuki Lam, Ajal Dargua Me Sum, Ajal Dargua Me Sum, Ajal Dargua Me Sum, Tam Sum Yahweh Me Lam, Den Sa Shitse Lenga, Dan Shen Jawa Me Sum, Aser Kya Pomo Sokki, Anyang Dam Jua Me Sum, Dan Sa Shitse Lenga, Dan Shen Jawa Me Sum, Ser Kya Pomo Sokki, Anyang Dam Jua Me Sum, Anyang Dam Jua Me Sum, Anyang Dam Jua Me Sum. So hopefully, well, tomorrow is Milarepa's death date, so it's a great opportunity tomorrow maybe sing a song. You bring your group of friends together. Okay, we're going to sing this pirate song. It's a little wacky. You all get to go ho ho. Look. Right? It's going to be a whole new thing. So yeah, so there's a way, as I said, that his impact and this sort of aspect of singing and expressing through song happened before he arrived. I think when I sing a song like that, I think of Milarepa. A way, if he was in that moment, he would sing that kind of song as a way to sort of speak to what we need to hold on, what we need to preserve, and what we need to release. So that's important. Anyone has questions or anything? I know it went a little bit late.
Thank you so much.
You think that it will. Sing the songs. What's that?
I have a question. So you're saying that the tunes to the songs that you had everybody sing were written by, it sounds like a Western guy, right?
Yes, yes, a student of Kempo.
I've not seen a lot of these, but I've seen some reproductions of like old sadhana that have sort of a simple tonal notation, like plain chant almost or something. So, I mean, surely somebody has kept. Does that survive somewhere for these songs?
Have a good night. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
It does, and sometimes those are done in a way so that people can memorize them easier. So there's a lot of cadence and repetition so that when they weren't written down, you could learn it by just, you at least remember the tune, and then you can fill in the things. But, yeah, I mean, there are certainly, those are tracked for sure, but it's sort of like people having the focus and interest to translate that, to put it out there. I think that's the thing that's unique with the Kempo Sutra is that he's like actively, okay, let's record it. And then you can go to his website and literally there's 70 songs you could sing. You could spend all night singing. So he's just trying to make an effort. I think sometimes people don't. And so then we don't have those.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, where were the original texts actually stored?
That's a good question. Well, I think, you know, when Haruka had kind of collected them, then they were at least in a form, and were printed kind of more in that way. And so there's sort of this moment where it goes from not in any kind of form, so then it's at least in a form, and so then, oh, well, we can keep that in place and hold on to it and copy it and that kind of thing. So it then became more standard literature in monasteries and places like that. So it's kind of like this process over time. I don't know if those were held in a particular spot.
Yeah.
I'd like to find out.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I would think that one of the things in terms of those lineages we talked about, the Gelugpas have been sort of very famous for really creating an institution. Whereas there's other lineages, it's like, we're going to go live in a cave. Where do we need that lineage? What do we get? We don't need a building. I'll go sit in the cave. And one could say institutions sometimes are problematic, but as a result, a lot of these teachings are sort of been kept and preserved, and we're still here because of it. And so
That's what I was thinking is one of the green monasteries in Lhasa has been opening an archive for the lineage, but I don't know if that was different.
And now things aren't the same there, so where you find them now is probably in India. So a lot of those things were taken out of Tibet when Tibet fell. So, you know, even if you go to the Patala, it's more a museum. It's not. There's no. If there are people practicing, they're not really practicing. It's sort of like from the people I know who've traveled there. It's like it's not that it's for show, but there's enough control and that it's not in the same way. And a lot of very precious texts were taken out when people were like escaping to India and things like that. So we have them in other places there. Probably Dharmasala, I think, would be a spot for them for sure. The wisdom publications is a good source because one of their missions is to preserve these texts. So they're a good resource for sure.
If I have any other questions about this, might email you?
Yes.
Is it on?
I don't know, it's my name, Carlyle, C-A-R-L-Y-L-E at PRS.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, and Kelly can listen. Kelly was just sitting in the back. She's a librarian university. Anyways. Thank you so much for coming. coming out on Thursday.
Yeah, anybody, if you have other questions or thoughts or like other things, just get hold of us.
No hesitation.
Thanks for saying.